Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Let me ask you something honest. When you were 30, 40, even 50 years old, did you have a picture in your mind of who you would be by now? Maybe she was calmer, more certain. Maybe she had figured it out by now. The relationships, the purpose, the sense that she finally fit inside her own skin. Maybe she had already made peace with her mother, or her children, or herself. But here you are, at 70 or close to it. And some mornings, you look in the mirror and there's this quiet, aching question that sits behind your eyes. Is this it? Is this who I turned out to be? So if that question lives in you, even just a little, then this video is for you. Not because something is wrong with you, but because something very human is happening to you, and you deserve to understand it. I want you to really hear this before we go any further. You are a woman who has lived. You have carried things that most people never had to carry. You have loved people who didn't always love you back the right way. You have made decisions under pressure, under grief, under exhaustion, under the weight of being everything to everyone. And somehow, you kept going. That is not weakness. That is an extraordinary kind of strength that our culture rarely celebrates loudly enough. But here is what I also know to be true about this season of life, the 60s and 70s, and the women who are in it. Many of you are feeling something that is very hard to name. It's not quite depression. It's not quite sadness. It's more like a mourning, a quiet grief for a version of yourself you were supposed to become, and didn't, or couldn't, or maybe were never allowed to. A grief for the career you set aside, the creative life you postponed, the voice you softened so that other people would be comfortable, the dreams you tucked away in a drawer and told yourself, later, 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 until later started to feel like it might not come. And now there's this uncomfortable space. The children are grown. Maybe you're retired or close to it. The roles that once gave your days their shape are shifting. And in that new quiet, all those old questions have come back louder than before. Who am I, really? Not as a mother or a wife or a professional, but just me. Who is she? That is not a crisis. That is an invitation. And today, I want to walk through that door with you. Let's start at the beginning, psychologically. From the time we are very young girls, we are handed a picture of who we are supposed to become. The good daughter, the selfless mother, the capable woman who holds everything together without complaining. Psychologists have a name for this. Carl Rogers, one of the great humanistic psychologists of the 20th century, called it the conditional positive regard problem. What that means in plain language is this: we learned early and very deeply that love was something we had to earn, that we were only acceptable when we behaved a certain way, achieved a certain thing, became a certain kind of person. And so we built what psychologists call an ideal self. This ideal self is not who you actually are. It's who you believed you had to be in order to be loved, respected, and safe. Maybe your ideal self was endlessly patient, never angry, never needy. Maybe she was professionally accomplished in a way that justified her taking up space. Maybe she had a perfect marriage, or raised children who never struggled, or kept a home that looked like she had it all under control. You spent decades chasing that picture, measuring yourself against it, falling short of it, feeling quietly ashamed of the gap. But here is the truth that I want you to hold. That picture was never drawn by you. It was drawn by your mother's fears, your culture's expectations, the era you were raised in, the church you attended, the messages you absorbed before you were old enough to question them. You have been running a race toward a finish line that someone else painted. And the most courageous thing you can do right now, at this exact season of your life, is to stop. Look at that picture and ask with real curiosity, is this actually what I want? Or is this just what I was taught to want? That question alone is the beginning of freedom. Now, I want to talk about something that we don't discuss enough. When you start to let go of who you thought you should be, when you begin to release that old picture, it hurts. And that pain is real. It is not weakness. It is not ingratitude for the life you've had. It is grief. Psychologist David Kessler, who spent his life studying loss and wrote the definitive books on grief alongside Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, says something that has always stayed with me. A grief is the price of love, and you can only grieve what you truly cared about when you mourn the woman you thought you'd become. The more healed version, the more adventurous version, the version who finally found peace early enough to really enjoy it. That mourning is a form of love. Love for yourself. Love for the potential that lives inside you. Here's what I want you to understand. Though grief, when we let it move through us, when we don't shove it into a drawer or call it self-pity or distract ourselves past it, grief transforms. Think of it this way. There's a metaphor I love. A caterpillar doesn't slowly, gradually become a butterfly. What actually happens inside a chrysalis is extraordinary and a little terrifying. The caterpillar essentially dissolves. It breaks down almost completely into a kind of cellular soup. And from that dissolution, from that period of being formless, the butterfly is built. You are in the chrysalis right now. This season that feels like loss, like confusion, like mourning. This is not the end of something. This is the between. You are not going backward. You are not failing. You are dissolving into something that has more room, more truth, and more freedom than the shape you've been holding for 50 years. Let yourself feel the grief. It won't last forever, but it will carry you somewhere new. Here's something that surprises most people when they first hear it. The self is not a thing you have. It's something you do. Psychologists who study identity, particularly Erik Erikson, who mapped the stages of human development all the way through old age, understood that identity is not a destination we arrive at once and then stay. It is a living, breathing process. It shifts and grows with every decade of our lives if we let it. Erikson called the central challenge of later life integrity versus despair. What he meant is this: in the later chapters of life, we face a deep psychological task. We are called to look back at the life we've lived, not with perfectionism, not with harsh judgment, but with a kind of honest acceptance. To make peace with the choices we made, the paths we didn't take, and the person we actually turned out to be. When we can do that, when we can hold our own story with compassion instead of condemnation, he called that integrity, not moral perfection, wholeness, the quiet dignity of a life honestly lived. But here is what I want to add to Erikson's wisdom, because I think the women of your generation were not always given permission for this. You are still becoming. The research on neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to change and grow, has shown us that the brain remains far more adaptable than we once believed. Well into our 70s and beyond, you are not finished. Your capacity for growth, for new experience, for genuine transformation has not expired. The woman you are becoming in this season does not have to look like the woman in that old picture. She can be quieter or louder, softer or more fierce. She can paint or write or travel or sit in her garden in the morning and decide that peace is the only ambition she needs. She can disagree with her children without guilt. She can disappoint old expectations without shame. She can be, for the first time in a very long time, a new. I want to talk about the stories now. We all carry stories. Stories about who we are. Stories about why our lives turned out the way they did. Stories we built from the evidence of our hardest experiences. I'm not someone who gets what she really wants. I left it too late. People like me don't get to start over. I should have done things differently. These stories feel like facts. They feel as solid and real as the floor beneath your feet. But they are not facts. They are interpretations, stories your mind constructed, usually during painful moments, usually a long time ago. to make sense of a confusing world. And here's what psychology teaches us about stories. The brain is remarkably loyal to the stories it has been telling. Neuroscientists call this confirmation bias. The way our minds, once they've formed a belief, automatically seek out evidence that confirms it and quietly ignore evidence that doesn't. So if your story is, "I am someone who missed her chance," your mind will helpfully keep surfacing every piece of evidence that supports that story, and it will quietly skip over all the moments that contradict it. Here is what I want you to do. Not as an exercise, just as a thought right now, while you're watching. Think of one story you carry about yourself, one of the old, heavy ones. And then ask F, when did I first learn to believe this? How old was I? What was happening? And is it still true? Is it actually still true? Right now? Most of the stories we carry about our limitations were written before we were 30. Before we had the life experience, the perspective, the psychological tools to question them. They served a purpose once. They helped us navigate a world that felt overwhelming. But you are not that young woman anymore. You have 60, 70 years of evidence that she doesn't account for. 70 years of getting through things, of surviving, of loving, of learning. It is time, gently, without judgment, to write a new story. Not a story where everything was perfect. Not a story where you pretend the hard things weren't hard. A story that is true, fully true. That holds both the losses and the strength, both the regrets and the resilience, both the woman you were told to be and the woman who quietly, persistently kept showing up anyway. And now we come to what I believe is the deepest truth of all. There's a word that gets misunderstood in our culture, particularly by women who were raised to push through, to strive, to always be working towards something better. That word is acceptance. People hear acceptance, and they think it means giving up, settling, deciding you don't matter enough to want more. That is not what it means. Acceptance, real psychological acceptance, in the way that researchers like Kristen Neff and Stephen Hayes describe it, means something completely different. It means turning toward your life as it actually is. Not the life in the picture. Not the life it should have been. Not the life you're still bargaining with the universe to get. The life that is here, right now. In this body. In this season. With this history. Acceptance means saying, this is what happened. This is who I am. This is where I am. And I am not going to spend the years I have left fighting with reality. That is not defeat. That is one of the most powerful acts a human being can perform. Let me tell you about something that has always moved me. In Japan, there is an ancient art called ezukintsugi. When a piece of pottery breaks, instead of hiding the cracks or throwing the bowl away, the artists repair it with gold. They trace every fracture with gold lacquer. They make the breaks beautiful. They make the history of the bowl visible. And they treat it as the most interesting part. The philosophy behind kintsugi is this: the broken places are not flaws. They are the story. They are what makes the object one of a kind. You are not a broken woman who failed to become who she was supposed to be. You are a woman of extraordinary complexity, whose cracks have been filled with the gold of every hard thing you survived, every love you gave, every morning you got up and kept going when you didn't have to. Coming home to yourself, accepting yourself, does not mean lowering your standards for your life. It means finally recognizing that the woman who has been here all along, you, was never the problem. She was always the point. So, where does this leave us? It leaves us here together at this moment. And I want to say something directly to you, not to women in general, but to you. The one who is watching this, the fact that you are asking these questions, the fact that you care enough about your own inner life to sit with them, that is not a sign that you're falling apart. That is a sign that you are as awake, as most people never get to the depth of questioning you are standing in right now. Most people spend their whole lives performing the picture and never once stop to ask if it's theirs. You are stopping. You are asking. That takes a particular kind of courage. And I genuinely believe, that the years ahead of you hold something you haven't been able to imagine yet. Not because life becomes perfect, not because the losses stop, but because there is a kind of freedom available to women in this season that was never available when you were busy being everything to everyone else. The freedom to be quiet when you want to be quiet. The freedom to say no without a 3-paragraph explanation. The freedom to spend a Tuesday morning doing exactly what restores your soul. The freedom to be known, really known, not for what you produce or provide, but for who you are. The woman you are is becoming. The one who is emerging from this chrysalis. She is not a diminished version of who you were supposed to be. She is the realist version of who you have always been. And she is worth knowing. Give yourself permission to meet her. Before you go, I want you to do one thing, not for me. For you. In the comments below, write these 4 words as, I am reclaiming my peace. Because I'm not because it's a slogan, but because there is something that happens when we declare something out loud or in writing that makes it more real in our minds. Psychologists call it declarative commitment, and it genuinely shifts how we relate to an intention. When you write those words, you are telling yourself, I matter, my inner life matters. My peace is something I am choosing actively today. And if this video touched something in you, if even one thing here felt like it was speaking directly to your life, I want you to share it with a woman you love, a sister, a friend, a daughter, someone who is carrying a heavy picture of who she was supposed to be. Because this kind of conversation, honest, real, without judgment, is exactly what women in this generation deserve to have. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I make these videos for you. For this conversation. For the women who are done pretending and ready for something true. And I will see you in the next one.